Let's start over. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to preface, because I didn't do this for the last group, with we're going to pause at the end. The presentation is not very long in itself, but we'll pause at the end and have time for questions. If you want advice about elections or advice about whatever, or just questions about the AIAS. So be thinking of those questions on our journey here. And then at the very, very end, we're going to give the current board some time to just give unsolicited advice to all of you. So our current board, be thinking about that as we get toward there. But I will go ahead and get started. I'm gonna move y'all to my monitor up here. So if I look this way, it means I'm looking at you. But my name is Scott Cornelius. I'm the current past president of the AIAS. And my presentation will actually explain why I'm talking to you. So we can go ahead and get into that. And I'll share my screen. Okay, y'all see that? Sweet, thank you. Okay, so welcome to the second informational webinar for the 2022 AIAS election cycle. I said this is the last group. The years thing, I'll just use a bunch of different years as we're talking. So this is the 2022 AIAS election cycle that you're running for the 2023 through 2024 board of directors. So forgive me for if that gets confusing, but I think that we all know what we're here for. So first of all, these are questions that you're asking to me, by the way. Who are you? I'm Scott Cornelius, the past president of the AIAS, as I just told you. Why are you running elections? If you didn't know, the immediate past president of the AIAS serves as elections chair every year. So we're going to get into kind of the structure of the board and roles and stuff a little later, but wanted to preface with that a little bit of preliminary education. Am I even qualified to run an election? No, I'm not. What kind of things are we going to talk about today? First of all, we're going to talk about the structure of the AIAS, like I said, so just mostly focusing on the board itself and a little bit of how it relates to the COP, things like that. Qualifications and responsibilities to become a board member, the timeline for the 2022 election cycle, and finally, the candidacy declaration packet requirements. So we're going to go over the packet itself. If you haven't seen it already, even though we're going to go over it today, you still need to read it in full. But we are going to go over the major points of it today. So starting out with the structure of the AIAS board of directors, there are 14 members of the board. It kind of has grown and grown over the years. So currently we have 14. We'll see when that changes. So these are the 6 positions that you can run for as a student. And so hopefully that's what you all are here for, unless you're here for the regional director position, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you have the president, vice president, and 4 quadrant directors, all of whom are elected by the Council of Presidents every year. That's how they get on the board. And the 4 quads, if you didn't know, are Midwest, Northeast, South, and West. And then, like I said, we also have 2 international regional directors. So last year they were regional ambassadors. They were just remade into regional directors, and they have full voting power on the board, which is a great step for us as an international organization. They are not currently elected because there's just a lot of kind of governance red tape around that we're unraveling. So they're still appointed via application. So the application will come out and the president will appoint the regional ambassadors with the support of the board. And the 2 international regions are Latin America and the Middle East. And then we have, these are ones that students can't run for, obviously. We have 4 alliance liaisons. They're appointed by the president from a pool of candidates provided by these organizations. So they're from the ACSA, AIA, and Carbon NOMA. And the final 2, we have our executive director, who is a non-voting member of the board, and the past president. And you can't run to be past president. You can run to be president, and then you will become past president if you win. So this is, I have to let in one. This is just a bit more of a complicated overall structure of the AIAS in a governance sense. So you can see where the elected positions are. These are still the regional ambassadors. So this is a bit outdated now, but they are currently voting members, so they shouldn't be in this box anymore, but they're not yet elected. And then all of these correspond to these different groups. And you can see at the bottom, the Council of Presidents and the committees both report along this line to the president. So that's kind of the general hierarchy and structure of the AIAS. If you want to snap a picture of this and study it, feel free. But it's a pretty self-explanatory structure, really. All right, so moving on. Well, I'll pause there for a moment just to make sure it's really important, obviously, that whoever's running for our board has a good understanding or feels like they have a good understanding of our governance structure and who reports to whom, so on and so forth. So I'll pause. Are there any questions about the positions or the structure or any of the things that I just described?
Can you just go back to the graphic?
Yes.
You said take a picture, and then as soon as I got it ready, it
Oh,
was a
sorry.
blank
I
slide.
guess I didn't really expect anyone to take a picture. Thank you for wanting to take a picture of it. Great. Okay. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Yeah, no problem. Any other questions about this? Okay. It's not a question. I'm just gonna mute one, no worries. All right, so getting into qualifications and responsibilities to be on the board, these are really easy. So the qualifications we'll talk about in a minute, but the responsibilities, these are very general, kind of the major 4 or 5 responsibilities of each of these positions. So there's a lot more that goes into this, which we can talk about at a later time, but in a major sense, the president also serves as a student director on the AI Student Council and then the AI Board of Directors. So just really quickly, what that means is as soon as the president is elected, so this would be for you all in January, whoever's elected as president is going to immediately go on to the AI Student Council. They start, and they have a calendar year instead of an academic year, so they'll start in January. And then they'll serve for a year as a student director on the Student Council, and then in December, they will roll on to the Board of Directors and serve on the Board of Directors as a student director for a full year. So Cooper, 6 months before he started being president, got onto the AI Student Council, and then 6 months after he's done being president, he'll be on the AI Board of Directors. So he'll actually switch with me on the Board of Directors this December. And then the president also coordinates committee work. So, you know, if you're on a committee, which I know a lot of you are, your chair and your liaison report to Cooper as the president, and he coordinates all their charges, things like that. Strategic planning is really done by everyone, but the president heads it up, orchestrates it. So we're currently starting work on the 2024 through 2027 strategic plan, and Cooper's going to be heading up most of that work. And then finally, the president does a lot of advocacy, which is very important. Vice president also serves as secretary and treasurer for the organization. So keeping our documents in order, keeping our minutes for meetings up to date, and also making sure that our finances and the way that we use our finances aligns with our mission. Those are secretary and treasurer, respectively. Chairs the finance and membership committee. So if you're on either of those committees, you've seen Nicole. She is doing a great job with those. And then they also serve as a student director, and they're on the ACSA board of directors, which, if you don't know, is the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture. So that's your universities and your professors are members of ACSA, most likely. And finally, the vice president also does advocacy. It's a very important job for both of our officers who work as full-time staff members in Washington, D.C., if you didn't know that. So you can't be a student while you're president or vice president. You have to move to DC and work in the office downtown, which is really cool, but it is a full-time gig. And then the not full-time gig, quadrant director. So their major stuff is a bit softer and more communication based than the president and vice president, but they have consistent communication with respective chapters. I originally wrote constant communication on this, which isn't true. You don't need to constantly be communicating, but just keeping it consistent is one of the big kind of challenges and parts of being a quadrant director. And a major part of that, obviously, is they host whatever sort of group gathering you have within your quad. They're called different things, and they coordinate what those should be about and what's going to happen there. And it's kind of a way for all the presidents in the quad to get together. If you haven't attended those, definitely do that. They also liaise to national committees. So each of our quadrant directors right now are on one special committee and one standing committee, and they are the liaison to the board. So they report to the board on what that committee is doing. They write their reports for that committee, all that stuff. They also, of course, attend all of our board meetings. So we have 4 regular meetings a year, one every season. And then if there's special things that need to happen in between, we'll have like 1-hour meetings at dates that the president will determine. And finally, they also do advocacy. Everybody does advocacy. It's a big, important part of the AIAS. And another big part of this position, I think, is board reports. So don't forget about those. We love board reports. Okay, So I'm going to jump back really quick because that's generally the 6 elected positions. That's their responsibilities. The regional director, the international regional director, pretty much has the same responsibilities as a quadrant director. In fact, at this point, they have exactly the same responsibilities as a quadrant director. This just still says quadrant director because I want to be clear that we're not electing regional directors this year, but nevertheless, same typical responsibilities. Qualifications for all of these positions are very simple. There's pretty much like 2 rules. You have to be a student at the time that you run for any of these positions. So I think that you're all students from what I can see. If you're not a student right now, you can't run. Sorry, this is a student board of directors. The only other real rule is if you're running for, and this is for those of you who are thinking about running for officer positions, but also if you think you might run at some point in the future, pay attention to this. You can run to be president or vice president if you're already on the board, even if you're not a student. So for example, if I were a 5th year getting my bachelor's and I ran to be a quadrant director and then I graduated, you can be a quadrant director when you're not in school. And then I could also run for president because I was on the board that previous year. But if you like graduate and then the next year you decide you want to run for president, but you're not on the board of directors, you can't run because you're not a current student. So I don't want to over explain that, but just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that in case, you want to incorporate that into your future planning, that kind of stuff. Let me let Simon in. Okay, so those are the pretty much qualifications and responsibilities. Of course, there's smaller qualifications. You have to like adhere to our code of ethics and all that stuff, but those are the major 2 qualifications. So are there any questions about qualifications or responsibilities for any of these positions?
Yeah, Scott, could you expand on what board reports are?
I would love to. Thank you, Trevin. So board reports, they're really a simple concept. You basically, as a quadrant director or any position on the board, you write board reports at each of our board meetings, each of our major 4 board meetings. So you write one for your own position. So for example, Tristan writes board reports as the West Quad director, the West Quad director report. Just talking about how the quad is doing, what communication he's had with different schools. If there's anything he wants to call to the board's attention, he writes it in there and the board reads it before the meeting so they can have kind of informed discussions at the meeting. And then outside of just reports for your own position, quadrant directors write reports for the committees they are on. Like I said, they're liaisons, so they'll write, like Tristan also writes the governance committee report, and I'm the chair for that. And that's all the board reports that I can think of at the moment. But essentially it's just a way for the board to communicate with each other. So I included it because it's very important to remember that not all of the position is like talking and meeting and stuff. There are times when you have to sit down and do paperwork, and it's still very important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sweet. Juanita has a raised hand.
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit about committees and quad directors on committees. Is there a certain amount of committees that a quad director is involved with? Yeah,
so we typically try to keep it to just 2. You'll just be serving on 2. It gets to be a lot, especially when you're, this is a volunteer position, so we don't want to put anybody on more than 2 typically because it starts to be like a job at that point. The president has in the past served on anywhere from like 2 to 4. And of course the vice president is chairing 2, so that's a bit more work. But for volunteer positions, we typically keep it to just 2. And if you like, I have heard stories in the past of quadrant directors who liaised 2 committees and also sat on one just because they were interested. And that would probably be fine, but just in the interest of not stretching it too thin, usually 2.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? And of course, if you come up with questions later on about the responsibilities, especially, I'm going to ask you all to set up a meeting with me individually regardless. So keep those in mind and be writing them down. Okay, so getting into the timeline, I will ask you all to take a picture of this. This information is also in the packet that's posted online, but this is just a bit more succinct and it has a couple of added things. So take a picture of that. The major thing that I want you to remember from this meeting is that candidacy declaration packets are due on December 2nd. So that's the first big deadline that you need to hit. That is the time at which you will actually be running when you turn your candidacy declaration packet in. So none of you right now are beholden to run. You're not required because you attended this or anything. But when you turn your candidacy declaration packet in, you're like officially a candidate. So if you miss that deadline, you will not be officially a candidate. So those packets, which we're going to talk about in a minute, what goes into those packets, but those are due at 11:59 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, which is 5:59 a.m. Eastern Time, which also means I have to have them in my email inbox by the time I'm awake, but you don't know what time I'm going to wake up. So just make sure you turn it in by 11:59 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. If you are past that deadline, like if you turn it in after I am awake, we'll have a discussion about like why, if something terrible happened, and I can make an exception, but for the most part, we have to keep really strict to all the elections guidelines. So please just keep that in mind. If a situation arises in which I have to be a bad guy, I'm sorry. Margaret has a question.
I'm really bad at understanding time, so this is definitely like a really silly question. But when you say 11:59 Hawaii Standard Time, you mean 11:59 on December 2nd in Hawaii. So 6 a.m. on December 3rd.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you like
I need
get
to make
to
sure in
midnight
my
your
brain.
time and you need a couple of extra hours, like you can turn it in at 2 a.m. your time or whatever. You shouldn't have to do that because of course we'll all be prepared, but yes. So it's actually past midnight for most of us. Okay, other questions about that deadline specifically, because it is important. Right. So just touching on these other points as well, on December 4th, 2 days later, I will confirm receipt of your packet. So if you're someone that I've like met with and I have on my list and everything and you didn't turn in a packet, I'll probably reach out to you at that point or hopefully the day before to ask again, like, did something terrible happen to you? Why didn't you turn your packet? And if it's just, I forgot, I probably can't help you out. But I will ask you nonetheless. And when you receive that confirmation email, when you have turned your packet in, that is, you are officially a candidate. So another good point is if you turn your packet in, or if you think you turned your packet in on time and you don't get a confirmation email from me on December 4th, make sure to reach out to me as soon as possible because maybe I didn't get it or maybe I lost it somehow. But that is the day on which those emails will be sent. And then week of December 5th, campaign packets. So those packets you worked on will be posted on the website. So you've probably seen that post before. It's called Meet the Candidates, and it has the headshots of everybody. And you click on the headshot to get their packet. We'll set up one of those pages with headshots of all of you. So including your campaign packet materials, you will have to send me a headshot. So get ready for that. And then also that week, I will send out next steps emails to all the candidates who turned in their packets. So what's the updated timeline? What events are we going to be having? What should you do next? That kind of stuff. So be tracking your email throughout the whole process, but especially that week. Month of December, just a note for all of you to know this is happening. It doesn't affect you really, but the vice president will be assessing chapters in good standing that month. So Nicole will be looking at what chapters are currently in good standing, how many votes they'll get at COP, which corresponds to how many votes they can vote with for you or against you. So that is when that will happen. And then a few elections-based events and opportunities like meet and greets, Q&As, time to ask questions, speech practices, all that kind of stuff will start happening in December. And a note, before the official beginning of elections, so most likely that will be when your opening speeches are posted, campaigning is not allowed outside of elections events. So you can campaign obviously at a Q&A and a meet and greet, but if you are campaigning on Instagram or I hear about you like meeting with people outside of elections events in December to campaign, you'll have to be removed from the election because that's how we do things. So no campaigning outside of elections events. Please don't do that. And don't let anyone campaign for you either. And then on December 30th, that will be when your opening speeches are due. So just a quick note about the structure of speeches, even though we'll talk about this a lot more before we get there. So don't feel like you need to hold this information in your head. Opening speeches are going to be pre-recorded. So you're going to send them to me on December 30th. It'll be the same kind of deadline thing. Send them to me on December 30th and we will post them online on January 3rd, which is the day of the opening COP session, the opening Council of Presidents session. So they're going to be able to view those whenever they want to, kind of a come as you please thing, and watch those. We want to make sure everybody has as much time to watch the opening speeches and get engaged as possible. And then your second speech, which is at the under the January 5th through 8th point, will be live. So those will be recorded on Zoom as you're saying them, but you'll be speaking to an audience. We kind of want to have the flexibility of having both of these recorded, but also want you to be able to speak directly to people. So that's kind of how we're navigating this. So, like I said, January 3rd, winter opening session, speech is posted. January 5th through 8th is what we're calling AIAS Governance Weekend. This is kind of the result of, if you haven't heard or seen the announcement, Forum is not happening in the typical way this year. So this is how we're dealing with the governance implications of that. We're having a governance weekend. And so during that time, your closing speeches will happen live on Zoom. We'll record them and post them to the website that day, but you will get them live. And on January 8th is the closing session of the Winter Council of Presidents meeting. And that is when people will vote for you. And that is that same day, you will know if you've won or if you've lost, and then we'll make the announcement to the membership after that. And that is the full election cycle. So any questions about this timeline? I know there's some gaps, like when are the events happening? What are the events? We'll fill those in as we go. But major points, are there any questions? Sweet. Ooh. Okay, nice. All right, so let's get to the last thing, which is the candidacy declaration packet. So if you haven't seen the call for candidates post, it is at this link that I'm going to click on in 2 seconds. If you haven't seen it, good job on getting here. But if you haven't seen it, please go read it. I'm not going to read it to you today, so please go read it for yourself and then click on the packet and read the whole thing. That has lots of good information in it. Some of it's the same information that I just gave during this meeting, but some of it is more. There are important points in there, so please read that before you submit your packet. But you can just go to AIAS.org, and this is still like the second or third post from the top, so you'll find it pretty easily. This is the graphic. So you'll see all this information that I already gave you today, what you can run for, who you can contact. It's me. And then, as I mentioned before, I will ask you all to meet with me if you continue being interested in running. I'll ask you to all meet with me individually. And so you just need to click on this button to do that. It takes you to my Calendly, and you can pick a time that I'm available. It's just a half-hour meeting, so they're really, really easy. I just basically want to know who you are, say these things to your face, like the packet is due on December 2nd. And ask what you want to run for, and if you have any questions, we can do that then. So make sure you schedule that. I already have a good amount of them booked up, so make sure you do it soonish so you can get a time that you want. So we're going to go down here to the bottom and click on the candidate guidelines, which is the major packet that you need to read. It has a nice letter from me, which I'm sure all of you have already read and enjoyed very much. So we're going to, for the purpose of today, you need to read all of this, but for the purpose of today, we're going to go down to the timeline, candidacy declaration packet submission requirements. So these points right here are the things that you really need to focus on over the next month, because on December 2nd, all of this will be due to me. So just to go over these really quickly, and please feel free to raise your hand or stop me if you have any questions, or you can just unmute and yell stop. So first of all, you have a letter of intent addressed to me. So letter of intent is a really important part of this, as well as the questionnaire are like the major things that people will look at when they're reading your packet, because those are the two main things that are written by you. I'm just kind of saying what your goals are and talking about why you're running. So put some thought into your letter of intent. Don't let it stress you out too much. It's just one page, but talk about why you're interested, what you're running for, that kind of stuff. And you can see somewhere in this packet, there's a link to last year's call or meet the candidates post. So if you want to see like examples of letters of intent, you can see those there. Next up is resume. So I'm sure you already all have a resume ready to go, but limit that to 2 pages, please. Next thing is a letter of school support from the candidate's faculty advisor, the AIAS chapter faculty advisor, or the head of the program at the candidate school as appropriate. So we do try to stick to those three kind of people: your faculty advisor, like your academic advisor, or your chapter faculty advisor, or the head of your program. They have a limit of one letter, and they just need to write, I acknowledge that this person is running for this position and I support it. So we can make sure that your school is supporting you, because it does take the support of people around you, especially your school, while you're doing these positions. So what I want to note is those three people are who we try to stick to, because we know that they kind of know what's going on with the AIS. They've been around a while. But if you do want to use someone else and you think you have a good reason for using a different person, please email me and ask. I've already had one person do that, and that was fine, approved. So definitely reach out if you want to use somebody else, but it does just need to be someone who we can trust to know what's going on, essentially. The point under that is important, and I already said this, but the statement must include a declaration of the school's awareness of the candidate's desire to seek a seat on the board of directors. So this is to combat a situation in which this person writes you a letter and is like, I love Scott. Scott's awesome. Scott could do anything. Thanks, signed head of the school. That person obviously doesn't know what they just wrote a letter for. So just make sure that it's stated what you're running for and who you are, all that stuff. And then one down from that, a letter of school support. So same thing, but this time from a fellow AIS member at the candidate's AIS chapter. So it must be from a current student, someone who is an enrolled AIS member. So make sure whoever pops into your head first, make sure they are a member of the AIS. That's very important. But they just need to, probably have more insight, honestly, into your performance in the chapter and the things that you've done for the chapter than whatever professor you get to write your first letter of support. So we want to hear from a student as well. I know I don't think anyone here, but we have an opportunity now for people to be members and not be associated with a chapter, so we can deal with that on a situation by situation basis. But trying to get somebody from the chapter. And then, like I said, another important part, responses to the candidate questionnaire. So you'll see the questions for that down here. But just make sure you give some thought to those. There's 5 questions and you have a limit of 3 pages to write all of them. So none of them should be novels or anything. But a good way to just get an idea of your platform, your goals, your journey, that kind of stuff. Last 3 things in the packet itself are just signed statements. The first is signed statement on the AIAS policy on intern compensation. So that's just stating that you support the idea that interns, architectural interns especially, are compensated for their work as opposed to an unpaid internship where all they're receiving is experience. The AIAS does not support that, doesn't acknowledge it, and it's also illegal. So we don't do that, and we want you to sign a statement saying that. Second one is signed statement on the AIAS elections code of ethics. So again, just stating I agree to be a good person and follow the elections guidelines. And then last thing is completed contact information sheet. And all of those are at the bottom of this packet. So you can just sign them up and print them and sign them, or sign them in Adobe, I don't care. Include them in your packet. And then last thing, which isn't really part of the packet, but needs to come with the packet, last 2 things really, is 1, you can have a campaign media item to be posted on the AIAS website and social media. So this is just a square image or a square GIF with no more than 3 frames. Either of those things have to be at 900 pixels by 900 pixels. And we're going to post it to Instagram. So everybody will get one piece of campaign, one piece of campaign media on the national Instagram. And then you can post whatever you want on your own Instagram or your elections Instagram or whatever you want to do once elections have started or once the campaign period has started. So make sure you're not posting on Instagram before the opening speeches go out, but I will make sure to communicate you the time at which you can actually start campaigning. But for the purposes of December 2nd, just one image is fine, or one GIF, and send it to me in that email. And then the only other thing is, like I said before, a headshot. So please send me a headshot with your packet. If you don't, I promised the last group that I would just go to Facebook and find a picture of you, one that is bad, and use that as your headshot. So you're not going to win if I do that. Make sure you send a headshot. If you need to get a headshot taken, go ahead and plan for that. Last thing I'll note on the packet is down here. Well, there's no printed campaign materials. That's obvious, and only campaigning prior, don't campaign prior to the start of official elections activities. Both are important, but I already said them. So down here is just the file naming conventions. I am a stickler for file names and using file name conventions correctly. So please do that. It's just so I can stay organized. I won't kick you out of elections or anything, but you will make me sad if you don't name your files correctly. So that's the page that we're going over today, just talking about what you need to do for December 2nd. So we're about good. Are there any questions on the candidacy declaration packet submission requirements at this time? It seems pretty clear. Sweet. I think I can stop sharing now and pull you all back down here. So that's all that we have for today. Are there any questions about any campaign elections things in general? And I said this is the last group. Please don't like unmute and say, so I'm running for Northeast Quad Director. We don't need to discuss what we're running for right now. But if you have general questions about how this is supposed to go, or any questions about advice or anything like that, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, I have a question about the campaigning process. So I imagine it's going to be pretty different from years past just because of the form that forum is taking this year. I was wondering if you have any advice on how to navigate that, since it's going to be pretty different than what we've experienced in previous years.
Yeah, it'll be different in a lot of ways. To be honest, the way that we've structured it, it won't be super different from the past 2 years and how virtual forum went. Just because there will be still a pretty condensed specified period of time in which you can campaign, in which your speeches go out, all that stuff. The only difference is we will be able to spread out like Q&As, meet and greets, those special events throughout December and the beginning of January. So it'll really be easier in a lot of ways because you won't like have so much to do all at once. Your days won't be filled with elections activities. But just, I guess, make sure that you are kind of in the mindset of a marathon more than a sprint in that case. Because like I said, December 2nd is when things will really kick off with your campaign packets, and then you'll be basically doing an election for almost a month and a half. So just be ready for that. Whereas before, you know, all our elections were like over in 3 days, really. Yeah, that's the only really real piece of advice I can think about the format itself, because like I said, we are trying to keep it still pretty similarly structured, just hopefully a bit less stress and a bit less like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Good question though. Let's see, is the process any different for the regional? Yes, it is. So either this week or beginning of next week, the application for regional ambassadors or regional, sorry, I'm gonna say regional ambassadors forever, regional directors is gonna be posted on the website, the same post as all the other election stuff. It'll just be the link at the very bottom. So we're tweaking that a little bit from past years, but it's basically gonna be a similar application to what has been used the past couple of years with similar questions to the campaign packet stuff. But it's more an application style thing. So those applications will go to the board will review them, and they will vote to select 2 ambassadors from that pool. And then the president is in charge of all appointments. So the board will ask the president to appoint this person, and Cooper will appoint them. Next year, most likely they will be elected positions in the same kind of elections as everybody else. But like I said, we're just setting up kind of the governance structure for that. So for this year, they are appointed one last time. No prob. Other questions? I'll give one last reminder to please sign up for a meeting with me through my Calendly. You can come up with more questions there, more questions that are specific to your situation. And I'm excited to meet with all of you. And if I have to reschedule your appointment after you schedule it, I apologize. I'm just a chaotic person and sometimes bad things happen. Okay, Tristan, we didn't need a reaction to me saying that. You can keep your head still. Okay, so
I said it'd be like that sometimes.
okay, it do be like that sometimes. All right, so we're going to go to the current board now to give some advice. Thank you, Colt. Colt has sent my Calendly link. So current board, if you have any unsolicited advice for these kind people, please let them know. I'm not going to call on anybody, but y'all can just go around when you're ready.
Well, I guess I can go first. I said this last time, so for everybody that was here in the last meeting, sorry, but I think it's really important to make sure that people get to know you as a human being and who you are as a person, in addition to who you are as a candidate, and to kind of have a little bit of fun, make a few jokes if that's something that you're interested in doing. The AIS, maybe we don't take ourselves super seriously, but we do a lot of important and serious things, so we always kind of toe that line. But have as much fun as you can, and like I said, show your personality a little bit.
Yeah, I'll chime in. So we're going to be doing a lot of this over governance weekend, and my big piece of advice is anytime we have like a break in programming or anything like that, you don't have to schedule like, oh, we're going to have a meeting where you can come talk to me type of thing, because a lot of what we did last year as candidates during forum is almost every single break there was either a director or a national officer who was trying to schedule a meeting, and not always many people showed up because people want breaks too. So don't feel like you're obligated or you have to, because there will be time for you guys to be able to meet and talk with everybody too. So don't be afraid to DM chapter Instagrams when it's the appropriate time. Not in the middle of programming, please. But yeah, so like what Julia said, be who you are. Some people from the West Quad here, they know that I'm usually pretty relaxed, let's say, because it's fun. I really have a lot of enjoyment being the West Quad director, and board reports, they're not that bad. I think they're really fun, because the way I see is the better notes you take throughout your chapter pod calls, Heartland huddles, Northeast Quad hangouts, all that stuff, the easier your reports are going to be. And the same thing with your committees. So you're really just kind of highlighting what's important in your board reports and things like that. So it's super fun. I'm having a blast. I recommend you guys try.
I'll jump
Yeah.
in. Oh, sorry. I don't know who was gonna
No, that
speak.
was me, Paulina. Go ahead. You're good.
Thank you. Similar to what I said last time. So you have to be like your biggest supporter. Be your number one cheerleader. You first have to believe in yourself in order for others to then believe in yourself. So yeah, and also like you have us, the directors as well. You can like DM us or like set up a meeting. We are, well, I know I speak for all the directors. We are just so glad that you guys are shooting to be in this position, and it's a great experience. I'm sure like you won't regret it.
Yeah, and I'll go. I'll say, talking about during elections and stuff, have fun. I know it's been said a few times, but obviously I'm going to keep saying it. But I said this last time too, because it's overlooked, but eat, drink water, sleep. There is at least one, I'll say, current board member who did none of those things during their campaign. And so I don't know who that is, but definitely encourage you to take care of yourselves. It's really easy. It's a stressful process, I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot of meetings and planning and speech prep and nerves, and like it's grating. And so if you're not careful, time gets away from you and you realize it's been 24 hours and you haven't eaten a meal. So don't do those things. I would encourage you to have somebody, whether it be a member of your chapter, a friend from a committee, someone, your quad director, like be like, hey, can you text me like every so often to just check in and make sure I'm not like dying. So yeah, I encourage you to have somebody that can be an accountability like partner, friend, supporter that can just be there for you. They don't need to be, you know, spoon feeding you, but a text goes a long way when you're super stressed. So reach out to your people that are close to you and let them help you out where you can. And yeah, just also get to know each other. Between last call and this call, like this is an awesome group of leaders, and there's people who aren't even at these calls who might be running. So get to know these people. Y'all are the next generation of AIAS, leaders, and you're currently leaders and will continue to be. So get to know each other, have fun. Y'all are the only people going through this at the same time. So nobody else knows what you're going through during this, forum election season. So get to know each other, have fun, and just lean into it. It's awkward and it makes you nervous, but just smile and, keep going.
Yeah, lots of great advice. I can jump in here. Let's see. I'll take it back to something Tristan said about board reports. They really aren't that bad. As the guy who's asking everyone to write them this year, I would just like to say that it's not a bad time. Let's see. I have run for both a quad director and a national officer, so there's a good chance I know how you're feeling right now. So if you'd like to meet with me as well, feel free. I've got a Calendly as well that I can send out at some point. Cooper's a liar. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know who Colt's talking about. It couldn't be me with the healthy elections practices. No chance. And then advice. Let's see. Okay, so the packets are a big deal. They're very important. Oh, thank you for the link. It's the first way that everybody's going to get to know you. And so put some thought into them. If you look through past examples, you'll see that it's typically just, a headshot as the cover page and then just some stuff, and that's no fun. So, put a little fun to it. We're all design students. Do a little razzmatazz. I've never used that word before, and I'm really sorry. But make them exciting. It doesn't have to just be your headshot and then a few facts about yourself, but you can really put your personality into them, and that's a good way to get out in front of everybody and get started. I guess that's my advice for tonight.
I guess that just leaves me with giving advice. Yeah, plus one to what everyone said, like these are things you're gonna hear now. It's like November 2nd, you're gonna hear until it's January 8th until the results. So these are things that like this isn't the first time and it will get reiterated, and it's just because we've been through it. So we just don't want you guys to, suffer. I think a piece of advice, or I'll piggyback on what Cooper said and saying like expressing yourself. I'm a big social media person, so if you want to go on my social media and like scroll down a few posts, you'd see me embarrassingly say like stuff about AIS and my campaign speeches or campaign videos with like my sunflower photo in the background. Wasn't my best form of work, but I like it. And I think it was fun and people got to know me that way and continue to get to know me that way. So definitely feel free to like message me if you guys are thinking about positions or just want another aspect. And I think my piece of advice for tonight, and I said it last time as well, is that, AIS is 66 years. There's so much history and trial and error of what we wanted to do. So like I say this to say, think through what you want to get accomplished in your position or, in the future of AIS. Yeah, 1 year. And it's not, I don't say it in a mean way. I just say it in like, it's always, everyone says words, always thinking about your last day type of thing. So like, see, do a little snooping, see what trial and errors that, we've made over the past few years and see what needs improvement, see what could get revived, see what needs to be created, and all that. So, kind of respecting the past, but also knowing that we need to grow and you guys all have input for that. So yeah, hope that wasn't too bad of advice.
Go ahead, Cooper.
Okay, I just have one more piece of advice, I guess, and that is that you all should do it. I mean, if you're willing and able, even just being a part of the elections process is very rewarding, and it's a time of great personal growth and getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that is just such an exciting process. I live for election season and the campaign trail, so this is like the most exciting time of the year for me. but I think that the whole thing is just very exciting and rewarding, and it's a very cool process. And so if you're willing to participate, I think that you definitely should.
Yeah, and kind of building off of that quickly. Sorry, Scott, I know you wanted to get done early, but it something that stops a lot of people from running is you think you figure out if you get it January 8th and you think you start January 9th. Just know that we're not gonna like throw you into it day one. There's 7.5 months of training and transition that comes with it, and it's a great process getting to know the board and the way the org works before you start. So if there are likely some of you that haven't fully determined or decided if you're planning to run or not, I would encourage you to reach out to past board members, current board members, and just talk about it. It is a good bit of work, but it's also just a great way to develop as a leader. And like Cooper said, just the whole process is really enriching, personally, and as well the organization obviously gets better for all of our new leaders that we have. And so yeah, don't think we're gonna expect you to know everything during the election process or as soon as the election results are announced. There's a lot of opportunity to learn and develop still, even after you get elected. So don't think we're expecting too much of you from the beginning. And so yeah, I think that's everything. Sorry, Scott.
Wait a minute. Sorry, Scott. I just wanted to add to that as well. Colt makes a really good point about not needing to know everything on your first day, but I think it's important for everybody to keep in mind that you won't always know everything anyway. A lot of our jobs are just about listening to what, the chapters at the leaders at your chapters are thinking about, what your members are thinking, and kind of basing whatever you're doing off of that. So don't feel like you need to have everything figured out ever, because it's always kind of about feedback and how we build on all of that.
Sorry, Scott. I have one real piece of advice to help you guys hit the ground running though. Start on your candidate pack relatively as soon as possible. Outline some of your goals that you would like to do. If you've taken a peek at the questionnaire at the end, there's 5 questions. You have 3 pages to get everything that you feel that is relevant on there. But the sooner and the longer you have to write this, the more well thought out and more fleshed out that writing is going to be. And it also helps set you up should you win your position. When I ran, I had pretty clear goals that I wanted to do, and that kind of helped shape with what I wanted to do in the first, what has it been, 3-4 months? I don't know. I'm bad at math, but either way, I highly recommend you guys take your time on that. I know architecture school, sometimes we cram things at the last minute, but that is one thing I definitely recommend you take your time on, because it'll help you calm the nerves a little bit. So yeah, that's the one thing I would do first. At least get started on. All right, thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Tristan. Anybody else? All right.
Well,
we just have, what?
I have a very quick one as well, Cooper. I'll let you go ahead though.
Yeah, okay. As you're probably seeing, the board has a good time, and it is a very fun and rewarding job. So again, I think you all should do it. But as you probably also have seen tonight, you do not need to be some incredibly talented, unnaturally intelligent person to run and serve on the board. And I think a lot of times I had these thoughts when I was running too, is like, I don't know that I can be on a board. I've never been on a nonprofit board before. I've never made a budget before and all of this. And you don't need to know all of that, as Colt said, and as we've said, there's a long training process, but I know that you're all perfectly capable of being on the board and would do an excellent job.
Okay, Scott, I promise this one will be quick. During the conference, if you do choose to run, take notes. Notes app on your phone, a notebook, your sketchbook. Take notes. The chapter presidents and students will be saying things to you throughout the conference, and people want to know that you're listening. So whether it's you drop something into one of your speeches, or you bring it back up in conversation with them later or during the Q&A, stuff like that, and conversation, it goes a long way. A lot of you are either current chapter presidents or have been in chapter leadership, and understanding that your quad director, the officers hear you and are actually listening to what you're saying goes a long way. So make sure you're taking notes during the conference and not just forgetting what people are saying to you, because it's really easy to, because you're so busy and stressed and nervous. But yeah, I encourage you all to take notes during the conference. It's one of those small things that people sometimes forget, but this is my AIS notebook. I keep it with me anytime I'm in meetings to try to track stuff. But yeah, it helps out a lot. That is all. Thank you, Scott Cornelius.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know why y'all keep apologizing to me. I'm the one that scheduled this meeting to go to 9. I'm good. Right?
Scott's old. That's the other thing, is you get to make fun of your past president if you.
Yeah, they're like, oh,
so.
Scott's past president. He needs to go to bed right now. No, I just have a few pieces of my own advice. Well, first of all, you all saw that I said something about using that quote from Cooper, and that will be going on my quotes page. If you get elected, you'll serve with me on the board or you'll be around while I'm serving on the board for 6 months. And if you say anything really, really good, you might get on my quotes page. So let that be a lesson to you. But yeah, lots of good advice from all of you. Thank you all for talking. Lots of very inspirational stuff was said. I liked it a lot. I was going to kind of build on what Paulina was saying about just you have to believe in yourself before other people believe in you. That's a really good point. And something that made me think of was just kind of the way that I think I saw AIS board members the first time I ran, especially. Which the first time I ran, by the way, I lost my election and it was fine. It was still an incredible learning experience, would never give it up. But yeah, the first time I ran, I was like, oh, these people are so incredible. I don't know why I'm doing this. And they're really not that incredible. They're just regular people who also decided to run and are sometimes good at it and sometimes bad at it. And we're all just dealing with it. So don't let yourself get intimidated by anybody else. Man, anyway. So yeah, believe in yourself. And then I told the other group this story, so I thought I'd delight all of you with it as well. Tristan is doing a weird thing. So when I ran the second time, when I was running for South Quad Director, it was in Toronto the last year that we had forum in person, and so I got up on the stage and I was doing my first speech, and there was a glass of water sitting on the podium for whoever, I guess, to just drink it. And you can already see that I talk with my hands a lot. So of course I got up and I said my name is Scott Cornelius, and I slapped this water over and it just flooded the podium. My phone, which had my speech on it, was on the podium, and my phone shut off because it got water all over it. And I was lost. And you get, by the way, if I didn't mention this, you get 1 minute as a quad director for your opening speech, 2 minutes for your second speech. Officers get double that time, but I was running for quad director. So I had 1 minute to talk. And I looked over at Amy Rosen, who was the past president, and to see if I could have more time. And she just shook her head at me. And so I panicked and I was like, oh God, there's so much water. I was saying this into the microphone. There's 500 people out there. And then I yelled some things that I don't remember anymore. And I walked up the stage and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And then the second speech, I came up with a towel and I put it down and everybody laughed. They thought it was funny. And I ended up winning, and it just helped me be a lot more genuine. I went up there feeling really I need to seem perfect, and then I spilled this water and everybody liked it for some reason. So just let that be a lesson to you to not take yourself so seriously. That's one of the big flaws of student leaders in general, is taking yourself too seriously. So be yourself. Maybe you'll get on my quotes page and people will like you for just being weird, but also being dedicated to this, which I know you all are. So that's my advice, and we have 5 minutes left. So if there's any last advice, yeah, we can stop telling that story now. It can die at this point. That was maybe 4 years ago, right? And it's just plagued me ever since. That's cool. But if there's any last advice or any last questions, we can take those now.
I'll give one last advice just because everyone else gave multiple advices. And I'll say something that I say this with the retrospect of like being 6 months, almost 6 months into the job, is that we're all a team. It'll take all of us to run AIS. It's not because me and Cooper are full time. It's not just because you guys as quad directors or directors chat directly with membership more frequently. It's like it'll take all of us to keep this running and to improve it. So when you guys are running, yes, obviously be mindful of yourself and all these things. And you guys are the only ones that are experiencing running in 2023. But get to know each other, like get to know if you guys have mutual goals, things that overlap, things that are different, like that you guys don't always have to move in step block, whatever words. But also just being mindful, like it'll take all of you guys to support your projects, because the projects I'm doing, like I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't in the support and quite literal help of my directors and my president. So yeah, just throwing that out there.
Nice, love it. Okay, 3 minutes left. Any last questions before we wrap up? Everybody looks good. Okay, well, I will let y'all go. Thank you for coming. Thank you for soaking in all this information. I will keep saying most of the things I said tonight, like on repeat for the next month. So sorry about that in advance, but you will get the information as much as I can give it to you. Please set up a Calendly meeting with me, and I will see you all very soon. And remember, December 2nd is your first big deadline. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.